When it comes to your retirement, do you want to have the same old plan everyone else has? Of course not. You're unique and have your own goals and dreams. Don't be treated just like a number. This is your retirement. So it's time to think differently. And you're in luck because you've found the Retire Your Way podcast with ILG Financial. At ILG Financial, you won't find generic, run-of-the-mill plans containing the same old cookie-cutter solutions. Dave Chase and the ILG Financial team focus on building one retirement at a time using their Think Differently philosophy. And that means your own comprehensive plan with customized solutions built to achieve just one goal, yours. So put on your Think Differently hats and get ready to take back control of your retirement today and for all the tomorrows to come. ILG Financial's Retire Your Way podcast was created just for you, and it's starting right now.
Income, legacy, growth. It's all right here at ILG Financial, and it's about helping you plan for retirement your way so you can achieve your financial goals. Call ILG Financial at 540-720-5656, or you can go online to ilgfinancial.com to learn more. I'm Ron Stutz, and Chase Lopez is here today. And Chase, how's it going? It's been a while since we talked.
Oh, doing great, Ron. Nice to talk to you again, and also nice to touch on, we were talking a little bit before we started recording, touch on a topic today that's a little less technical than what we normally talk about. So it'll be a good conversation, I think, today.
So not very many numbers today, but some interesting thoughts, and I know you always provide us with some good food for thought. And I was just thinking about, when you're planning a vacation, you put a lot of thought into where you want to go, what you want to do, how you're going to get there, and what you will do once you get there. A lot of thought goes into your vacation, but people don't put as much thought into their retirement. Let me give everybody your number right now if they'd like to call you and get a conversation before we really get into this. 540-720-5656. Once again, that's 540-720-5656. Back to the topic at hand, vacations. You also put a lot of thought into what you can afford and how much you're going to need to do what you want to do, because all these things cost money. Retirement is your biggest, longest vacation in life. The same kind of planning and thought, and then some, really ought to go into your retirement, but for most folks, that is not the case.
Boy, that's you couldn't have used a better analogy there, Ron, with the vacation analogy. A lot of times, people are very focused on, the money and the numbers of retirement, right? Where should I save? What investment should I use? How do I minimize my tax burden? But they only have kind of a vague sense of how they want to spend their free time in retirement, right?
Yeah.
So it's a lot like funding that vacation you were talking about. But unlike that vacation, in retirement, we don't know where we're going to go. We don't know what we're going to do. And that's really what we're going to talk about today is, planning out that retirement as far as, how we want it to look. And really looking at some factors in retirement planning that a lot of people just don't really think about.
As you said, a lot of people don't know where they're going to spend their retirement, what they're going to do, how much their health will allow them to do. Mm-hmm. And let's take a look at some of the factors in retirement planning that a lot of people don't think about. One thing that strikes me is a lot of people may just, when you ask them about what they're going to do in retirement, they may focus on the money and only the money, but they don't take all those other things into consideration.
Yeah, that's exactly right. By no means are we saying we shouldn't save, right? That's obviously, as we're gearing up for retirement, the whole goal of saving for retirement is putting some money away, investing it right, so that you can use it in retirement. What a lot of people forget is the second part of that sentence, right? Is actually using it in retirement. So people forget to think about the activities that they want to do. Some people, like to travel. Some people don't like to travel, right? Everyone kind of has their own set of priorities that they prioritize in retirement. Mm-hmm. But you want to plan your activities with timing in mind because that's essential, right? As our listeners can probably relate to, the first 10 years of retirement aren't going to be like the last 10 to 15 years of retirement, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Naturally, we get older, and there's just some things that we're not going to be able to maybe physically do in those later years of retirement, right? Yeah. So we want to plan all of that out in advance, right? So oftentimes on this podcast, we talk a lot about, planning for, kind of worst case scenarios, right? Long-term care. We've talked about that on a podcast. Income in retirement. We've talked about that, numerous times. But we also want to plan for the fun stuff. So, some people, like golfing, right? Well, how often do you want to golf? Do you want to take a golf trip? How much is that going to cost? And then how do we kind of bake that into, your entire plan?
Yeah, as you and I have talked about many times before, there are 3 stages of your life after you retire. There's the go-go stage and the slow-go, and then there's the no-go when health issues are really getting in the way. And you have to think about all those things and how you're going to actually spend your time after you don't have a paycheck anymore.
100%. And think about this. If you want to do some sort of, and this is just an example, right? You want to go to Europe and you want to, do a lot of walking and things like that, from city to city, get on trains, doing all that type of stuff. Well, if that's something that we want to do, we probably want to plan to do that early in retirement as opposed to later retirement. To use your analogy, right? The no-go stage, we don't want to be, trudging around Europe during the no-go stage. So really, that's one of the things that is underrated as far as what us as advisors help folks with is building out that plan to say, okay, depending on what exactly you want to do, when should we do it? How much is it going to cost? Where's that money going to come from? But it's really, important for folks as they approach retirement to start thinking about these things and planning for the age, right, that they're going to retire and kind of what they want to do. A
lot of people, worry about not saving enough for retirement. But then there are some scenarios, I suppose, and I know you probably work with some folks like this who may actually save too much because, they get to a stage in life where they're in that no-go situation and they don't really have any way to spend that money that they have accumulated for that very purpose.
It's so true, Ron. Some of those big unknowns, include how long we're going to live, what health crisis might hit us, right? And of course, we have our savings for a rainy day. But really the conversation centers around being able to, plan out exactly, what those expenses are. Because what we don't want is you to, plan for every worst case, skimp on a trip or something like that. And, by the time you get to the end of retirement, right, there's still a bunch of money left over and you could have done so much more with that money during your lifetime. Yeah. So really, our job as advisors is to just optimize that money that you've saved so you can, do what you want, right, for kind of a lack of a better term.
You can actually enjoy your retirement. And I guess in some ways you could say, stop and smell the roses. Enjoy life as you go along.
Great saying. Oh, yeah. I 100% agree with that. And quite frankly, Ron, I'm going to just be honest with you. A lot of advisors kind of miss that mark, right? As advisors, we're caught up every day in, the markets and, planning and all of the numbers that are kind of needed in a plan, of course. But to your point, you kind of miss, to throw another kind of analogy out there, you miss the forest for the trees, right? I think that's how the saying goes. And really, what we're talking about there is we want to be able to use this money. And I'll never forget, Dave has a great saying that he tells folks when we're doing this planning thing for folks, which is he says, you skimp and you don't go on the trip, right? You don't go on the Europe trip, or you don't buy the boat that you wanted, or, et cetera, et cetera. You don't do what you want to do because you're saving for every kind of worst case scenario, right? And then at the end of your life, there's money left over and it goes to the kids. Yeah. Well, what do you think the first thing the kids are going to do once they inherit that money?
Well, a lot of them are going to, spend it right away. But
they're going to buy the boat, right? They're going to buy the boat. They're going to go on the Europe trip that, mom and dad always said that they wanted to go on. And you know what they're going to say? It's to honor mom and dad, right?
Exactly.
Mom and dad always wanted to go on the trip. They always wanted to buy the boat.
That's a great way to put it.
So we always joke with clients. We say, the boat is getting bought and the trip to Europe is happening. You have the decision as to if you want to be a part of it or not. So I say all that to say that is a big part of, making the most of your retirement is building out a plan to kind of have these goals in mind, and us as your advisor will kind of help you, achieve those goals.
Yeah, hopefully you can reap the benefits of your hard work over time, putting together all that money and enjoy some of those things yourself rather than leaving it behind. First of all, Dave Lopez is a smart guy, isn't he?
He's a sharp tack, as they would say.
Well, some people, aren't the sharpest tool in the shed, but Dave is right up there at the top of the list, man, I'm telling you. Mm-hmm. But, it does make sense why people focus less on activities than on money when thinking about retirement, especially considering the big unknowns the future holds, especially as we get older. I mean, it really is something you ought to spend some time thinking about.
Oh, 100%, 100%. And don't misunderstand what we're talking about today. We still want to take into account some of those things that could arise in the future, like, long-term care, health stuff, things of that nature. What we're really talking about today is retirement's really supposed to be something that people enjoy, right? Going back to, the top of the podcast, we talked about It's supposed to be a vacation, right? Yep. So not only do we want to take in those kind of worst case scenarios, right? But we also want to build out a plan so that, we can kind of enjoy some of this stuff. And it kind of, I've read a few articles and it makes sense, right? Which is, when you enter retirement, it can be stressful, right? First time in 30 or 40 years, someone hasn't had a paycheck, right? So it can be a little stressful. So what you want to focus on is, in order for your retirement to be as long as possible, we want to alleviate some of that stress. So that's where we kind of come in with building out a plan, not only for the stuff that you're worried about, but also building out a plan so you can buy that boat or you can, take that Europe vacation that you want to take.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up. The whole thing, the whole idea here that we're talking about is to make the most of your retirement. And one way you can do that is by investing in your health now, so that you have the option to actually do these things that you've always wanted to do. And everybody needs to think about that.
100%, 100%. And you'll want to enjoy the more active activities when you can, kind of going back to what we were talking about before, skiing, golfing, all that stuff. So just want to build that into your plan. And then when we're looking at some of the more needs-based things, right, like healthcare expenses and, things of that nature, this goes back to what you were talking about, Ron, the go-go, the slow-go, and the no-go, right? During the go-go phase, right, that beginning phase of retirement, the healthcare expenses typically, right, this is more of a general statement, but typically the healthcare expenses aren't going to be as high during those years, right? Yeah. So really we want to make sure that in those early years of retirement, we are taking advantage of having less expenses on that front and being able to do more stuff. So it's really important to be honest and upfront with your advisor about what you want out of retirement. Before you retire, you and your advisor should be having an honest conversation as to what you want your retirement to look like, what you want to kind of achieve during that retirement. And, a firm like ours, where we kind of specialize in helping out folks in or near retirement, we've seen this happen, with hundreds of clients, right? So we'll be able to give you some insight as to, okay, if you want to do, the trip to Europe, maybe we do it earlier rather than later. And then we start to prioritize these things that you want to do. And then we can map out exactly, when you can do it and where the money's going to come from for those things.
A thought strikes me that a lot of folks who are doing business with you, who are, ILG Financial is helping them get to and through retirement. A lot of those people who have a plan and have given this some thought, but for the rest of their lives, they're most likely going to see that they will actually need less money than they thought. If they have a plan put together and if they thought about all this, and then you can think about, legacy and all that kind of thing, but you're going to be okay as long as you have a plan and as long as you're honest and upfront with your advisor about what you want out of retirement. Dave Lopez, Chase Lopez, the folks at ILG Financial can help you get to that point.
Oh, 100%. And remember, there's no kind of one-size-fits-all solution with folks, right?
Yeah.
One of the things that we've talked about on this podcast, multiple times is, hey, everyone has their own unique goals. So you had mentioned legacy. For some people, legacy is important. For some people, it's not, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. Everyone has their own kind of priorities and their own goals. But one of the things that we help folks with is identifying those goals. Because sometimes it's hard to know exactly what your goals are. So we help identify those goals. And then once we know what the goals are, well, now it becomes very easy to build out the plan, because we know, hey, this is goal number 1, this is goal number 2, and we can kind of check it off much like a checklist, right? Make sure we're, fulfilling all of those goals.
Well, as you mentioned before, there is no one-size-fits-all when it comes to retirement planning, and everybody's situation is different. We're all unique, and so that is why it's so important that you don't want to have the same old plan everybody else has. And at ILG Financial, they help you plan on an individual basis, and you guys do a great job with that, Chase.
Oh, thank you. And yeah, hopefully, things like this podcast. We also have the YouTube series as well. Hopefully, stuff like this just helps. Really, the whole idea behind today is just to get folks thinking about something that maybe they weren't thinking of, right? So today is really just about thinking, hey, for some of you numbers people out there, where they say, hey, I have the numbers, down like the back of my hand for retirement, right?
Yeah.
Think a lot of your engineering types out there. I have retirement figured out. I've got the numbers kind of laid out in a very detailed manner. Well, we want to think about the stuff that we talked about today, right? Which is what do we want retirement to look like? What things do we want to do? What do we want to achieve during that time? And that's not in addition to the number stuff. That's kind of what we help folks, focus on as they enter this new chapter of their life.
Well, folks, by listening to this podcast today, you are now one step closer to learning what a customized retirement strategy can do for you. When it comes to retirement, you don't want the same old plan everybody else has, because you're unique. You have your own goals and dreams. Don't be treated just like a number. But here's an important number, 540-720-5656. 540-720-5656. That is your number for ILG Financial in Stafford, Virginia. And if you want to check them out online, you can go to ilgfinancial.com, ilgfinancial.com. And, of course, as we talked about before at the top of this podcast, income, legacy, growth, it's all right here at ILG Financial, and it's about helping you plan for your retirement your way so you can achieve your goals. One more time, that number is 540-720-5656. I'm Ron Stutz. Chase Lopez, it's been my pleasure to hang out with you for a while here today. You made some very good points and gave everybody some good food for thought.
Thanks, Ron. Really appreciate it, as always.
Join us again next time for the next edition of the Retire Your Way podcast with Chase Lopez or Dave Lopez. You get them both at ILG Financial. The information provided is for educational purposes only and is not intended as investment advice for any individual or entity. All information contained herein is believed to be from reliable sources. However, we make no representation as to its completeness or accuracy. The views presented today are those of Dave Lopez and do not necessarily represent the views of the Alpha Star Capital Management, LLC. The opinions expressed are subject to change without notice and do not constitute financial, legal, or tax advice. Please consult your financial professional before executing any financial strategy. Investment advisory services offered through Alpha Star Capital Management, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Alpha Star and ILG Financial, LLC are independent entities. SEC registration does not constitute an endorsement of the firm by the Commission, nor does it indicate that the advisor has attained a particular level of skill or ability.